Let's go ahead and get started with Chapter 3. Chapter 3, we're going to start working on one of the concepts that's important in our book and is very important to understand, and that is the CSG concept, which is the constructive solid geometry. With the CSG method, we're going to be looking at the parts and trying to pull apart maybe some of the main features or the main geometry that we're going to establish at the beginning of our sketches in order to create the part. So this is a good model strategy here for the part that we're going to be laying out right now. So the locator design is the sample problem for the chapter, and this is a really good way to just start kind of looking at the parts and trying to visualize, what am I going to start with? What basic shapes do I see? Because sometimes it works out to look at a cube and chisel things away, but a lot of times it's a whole lot easier to bring in different core pieces of like solid geometry to the part and build that way instead of taken away. So we've got to look at the geometry and understand what it is we're going to do, and then start to rationalize what we're going to do first, and then what are we going to do second. So learning to look at a part and then start thinking about what am I going to draw first is a skill that we're going to develop as we get into some of these problems. And the more you do, the more easy it's going to be to look at that and say, hey, I know I got to draw this, I got to draw that, so I can cut this. And so I promise as time goes along and you get into these problems, you'll definitely find that you eventually don't even think about it. It just happens, and you have to just give it time and give it some practice. So as we start off this problem, we're going to start off on page 3-7 to start the new drawing. So this one does happen to be a metric drawing. So from your home menu, when you look at these buttons right here, remember that these are in inches, and we're not going to be able to use one of those to get started. So we're going to want to start a new drawing under New, and we're going to make sure that we go in. When you probably go into this for the first time, you're going to have to expand this template out, but you're going to go to Templates, go to ENS, US, and then up underneath that is going to be the metric set of templates. So over on the right hand side, once again, we have our standard IPT files, our assembly drawings, and then our regular DWG files. So for metric, we're going to start with the standard millimeter IPT file. Make sure you pick on the millimeter. This is the DIN. This has the front view associated with a different work plane. That's kind of like for more of your European models, where the work plane is set up for X. XZ is set up for the front view. So our XY is set up for our front view for our standard millimeter. So we're going to pick that one, and then we'll get started with a 2D sketch. As we start our 2D sketch on page 3-9, it does ask us to go ahead and change some of the snap settings. So I'm going to click on my Start 2D Sketch, click on my plane to get started with that, and then I'm going to look at my settings. So one of the options is to use a snap or a snap to a grid, and I don't have a grid on now, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my grid on. This is not on page 3.9. I think they referenced it at some point, but it was something that was covered in the other chapter. So if you go into your application options, you can go into Sketch, and there is a little section up here for grid lines, and you can turn that on. And that's if that's something that you like. Sometimes when we're designing, it's easier just to kind of keep relationship of your lines if you're snapping to a point. Some people just like that method of drawing. If you don't like it and you don't find it necessary, I'm not going to require you to turn that on. So that's a personal preference, but I want to make sure you know where it is in case you do want that. The document settings is where we're going to go in and find our snap options. So the snap right now is set for 1 millimeter, and we want to change that. So I'm going to make that 5. I'm going to hit my tab button, go to 5. The display grid is set at 2, and then we'll just change. Every major line is going to be at 5, so that just kind of changes the line settings right there for the grid and how that's going to appear on your work on your work surface. So I'm going to hit close, and now we're going to get started. Before we get too far into this, I'm just going to let you know that I am making a change, a recommendation for the method in which they started this one. I want to create my view, and I'm gonna keep it on the same plane. This is going to be my front work surface. So the very first sketch that they complete that with the dimensions of this. I think the 75 by 50 rectangle, and I want to sketch this as the 75 by 15, and then extrude it into the z-axis at 50. So that's just a little change I'm going to make. So then that way my front view lines up with the picture that we have here, and I just kind of plan that a little bit different. So starting over on our sketch, I'm going to go back to sketch. I'm going to go to rectangle, and once again I prefer to start my rectangle at the origin, so I am going to make sure that I do that. I'm looking at my my box here as I'm looking at my snap options, because that is set at that snap is there and it's clicking to it. You should see that your pointer should just snap right over to those every 5 millimeters. You should have it snapping. So because that is on, I'm able to draw that 75 by 15 millimeter rectangle pretty quickly. And now I'm going to, I don't even need to put a dimension on it. I can. If you want, it's fine. If not, it doesn't matter, because it was there at the beginning, but there we go. It's not a big deal. But I want to finish this now, and I'm going to extrude this box 50. So then that creates the base. All right. Also in the chapter, it did go over being able to use your measure tool. I'm going to go back and edit sketch 1 so we can go over and look at it. But your measure tool is located under your tools ribbon. So click on measure, and if you click on it, it'll prompt you the length of the line. You can restart that if you want to complete a different measurement. And a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, I'm quicker to just put a dimension on there and dimension it just the same. But there is a measure option if you don't want to put the dimension on it and define it. Sometimes, we just have other needs for it, so that's going to be a personal preference. Alright, so I'm going to finish this sketch, and I backed up too far. Sorry. Let's just, I hit the undo button, and I got rid of that sketch, so let me hit OK. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go to the bottom of this part now. So using your view cube, you can rotate this around, click on the bottom, and it's going to immediately orient it that way for you. Or you can use your orbit button. When you use the orbit button, remember that the handle right here, if you pick on the vertical, the top, the one at the top, one at the bottom, as you spin that, that's going to rotate that in that direction. And if you take the handle and you rotate it left to right, or using the handle that's at the east and west location, it's going to change that. So, get familiar with how to rotate this thing around. Looking at that view cube, it's very important to kind of get used to that, where you can click on that, use these arrows to rotate it and orient it. And the more you do to get yourself familiar with those little tools to help orient your drawing, the more fluent you'll become with changing it around to get to different features of your part. So I'm going to click on Start 2D Sketch because I want to sketch this on the bottom. So what we're getting ready to do is we're getting ready to draw the cylinder on the bottom, and then we're going to extrude it in the oh goodness, I guess we'll be extruding it in the Y direction. So I'm going to go to circle. I'm going to point to the middle of my line, I should see a green dot appear there. If you don't see a green dot, then you should probably pick a point on there. I just don't know why you wouldn't see it. That might be I was just looking for the place for the points where it would snap to it. It's on snap to grid. I'm going to just go with this. I don't see it off the top of my head. I can't think of it right this second. But go into your circle. I mean, you can always lock it down with your dimensions if you need to, but it should automatically snap to the midpoint of that line. And that's just one of the features in Inventor that is really nice, is that it automatically goes there, and those are always active. So I'm going to finish this sketch. Remember that now when we go to extrude, we've got a circle that's now divided by 2, so you have to be careful when you are making your profile selection. So you can either select this side or this side. You want to make sure that you select both of them, because you can see here if you pick one or the other and don't pick the other one, you're going to only have half the circle. So make sure you pick your circle and then make sure you change the direction. So we're going up and we're using the length of 40 millimeters. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at completing is the hole that goes through the middle. So we're going to use that as a cut feature. So I'm going to rotate this back around, and now I'm going to pick the surface, and I'm going to pick this top surface right here and create that sketch. So start a 2D sketch on this surface here, draw your circle so it's already oriented, and now we can draw a circle with a 30 millimeter diameter. So click on that. You're going to finish this 2D sketch, and then we're going to go ahead and go to extrude. This one we're going to cut, so you can see the output here for the boolean is set at join, and we want to change that to cut. So we're going to cut, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going through all. Alright, so I'm going to pick through all, and that way I don't have to specify length, but I know that anytime I change the length of this, the hole is always going to go right through the center of that. So I'm going to hit OK, and that's going to be the completion of that. The next thing we're going to look at is placing a point or for a feature, and that's going to use the point command. So that's going to be followed up with the hole command. We're going to do something a little different. I'm sorry, just looking at the book here on page 325. We're not going to use the point. We're just going to go straight into the hole command. So I'm going to use the linear placement for this. So I'm going to look at the position. So I'm going to position the hole in here, and then I'm going to specify that with a dimension as well. So let me place that there. Okay. What I'm going to look at next is making sure I have the hole set up, and I think mine has set up as the default for what I used last. So I've got the position located on here. However, mine has switched over to counterbore, so I want to take the counterbore hole off. So that's why mine was looking just a little bit different, if you notice that. So we do have other different types of holes that are available for us to use, and boy, these sure do make it easy to go back and make a change. So if it's a hole or if it's being changed to a counterbore, countersink, this is a great command to get familiar with to be able to change that. It also has the capability of doing threaded holes, and we'll definitely get to those later on. So looking at what I've got here, I just dropped the hole on here, so I've got the seat turned off to none. Now I want to locate the hole. So I'm going to click on the line over here on the right, and that's going to dimension that hole from the right side edge. So this Doesn't even require you to